The African National Congress has expressed concerns about the derailment of its economic policies for South Africa due to the differences in economic ideologies with the Democratic Alliance and Inkatha Freedom Party as part of the newly formed Government of National Unity. Now, the ANC had previously advocated for Afrocentric policies which are at odds with the more market-oriented and pro-business stance of the DA and the IFP. However, the ANC Secretary General Fikile Mbalula emphasized that the coalition deal is a remarkable step and that the parties will work together to address the country's economic challenges. This morning, Professor Andre Roux, economist, University of Stellenbosch University Business School, joins me. Thank you so much, Professor Andre Roux, for joining us.
Thank you, and good morning to you and all your viewers.
So first, what is your assessment of the economic ideologies of the ANC, the DA, and the IFP? And how well do you think they would either align or further polarize the newly formed Government of National Unity?
Yeah, well, let's start off by saying that the very idea of what's happening here, Government of National Unity, is indeed influential, exciting, and in many ways unexpected. Interesting roommates, not bedmates, but interesting roommates. Ideologically speaking, I don't think they're all that far removed from each other. People often say you must listen to what the ANC walks and not what it always talks. And essentially, going back over the last number of years, even decades, the ANC's economic policies have broadly been aligned with fairly conventional policies. We think about, in recent times, the repeated demand by the Minister of Finance to bring about fiscal discipline. We think about the Reserve Bank, its stance regarding interest rates and trying to combat inflation. So in many ways, I don't see much of an ideological gap between them. One would obviously have to point out that the DA is probably more inclined to looking after, it was a big business, and the ANC is obviously more inclined to be concerned, and quite rightly so, about the lot of the poor and the unemployed. By the same token, however, it's within the DA's interest in any other party to also be concerned about unemployment, inequality, and poverty. One should always see, I believe, growth, for instance, as being a means towards an end. Growth itself doesn't create jobs, doesn't create more equality, but is a means towards an end. And all parties will obviously want to pursue higher growth, but very importantly, and I'll stop talking now, within the context of economic stability.
Now, the ANC's economic plans are actually centered around addressing issues like unemployment that you mentioned earlier, particularly now for the youth and the public service, that it works to address the high rate of unemployment in the country, which contributed to its loss of parliamentary majority in the recent election. But the people will still ask the question, can this Government of Unity achieve that? Can there be an alignment since it actually remained bodgy for the ANC administration?
Absolutely. And I think we should also point out that the whole idea of a Government of National Unity is in many ways very strange and new to everybody. Yes, back in '94, we had a kind of a Government of National Unity between the two or three major parties at the time, but it's a totally different context now. As I said earlier, we have two parties which really are very unlikely roommates, ANC and DA. And obviously within the support base of both parties, there might be some reservations and even some resentment about this, not coalition, but this kind of partnership that has arisen. Having said that, and as you're scrolling down this table, I think that any party, both parties, need to realize it's time to get back to basics. So, as I said a bit earlier, growth is a means towards an end. And reaching growth requires us getting the basics right. So we need to start looking seriously. And we all know about our electricity problems in this country, so-called load shedding. That alone has shaved off probably up to 1.5 percentage points of growth per year over the last few years. Infrastructure, transport infrastructure, our harbors. And a recent survey, and it's questionable, the recent survey, Cape Town harbors was classified as one of the weakest in the world. This, while we're trying to export fruit and minerals, etc. So it's energy, it's infrastructure. Other obvious ones, crime and corruption. And I'm sure that both parties are serious about wanting to reduce crime and certainly to reduce corruption. Then we think about things such as education, huge problems in education in the country. Both parties would want to address that. So, in as much as I believe that all members of the Government of National Unity will want to go for these basic issues, and rightly so, get the basics right, get the fundamentals right, and then as those fundamentals are put into place, then we can start thinking about growth, which in turn may and should and could bring about more jobs. It's not guaranteed. Growth itself these days, nowhere in the world guarantees job creation, but it's certainly a step in the right direction. But that growth will only create jobs if we go back to education. We need an appropriately skilled population. And again, I'm sure all parties have a vested interest in achieving all of these things. For whatever the vested interest might be, they have this in common.
Okay, so let's now see how it affects the South African rand. In what could be termed as something positive, we saw on Friday how the South African rand appreciated after the DA said a deal had been struck with the African National Congress. Now, the rand traded at 18.40 against the dollar, around 0.2% stronger than its previous close. And we also see that the GSE, the blue chip top 40 closed around 0.7% stronger. So for you, are these signs of good things to come, and can that be sustained?
Well, they are signs, and I think those trends are not unexpected. Obviously, things can change overnight, but the very idea, and it's all about market sentiment, and I do believe that this deal is seen in a positive light by markets. I mean, they are seeing from this the very real possibility of more policy certainty, policy stability. I'm sure that both parties, all members, will agree upon, as I said earlier, trying to achieve and maintain fiscal discipline. I'm sure that they all agree, perhaps sometimes with a bit of heartache, but they all believe in the need to combat inflation. And obviously, that's all about interest rates. Your previous segment, I think, we're talking about inflation in Nigeria and rising interest rates. Here in South Africa, we're looking at a leveling off of interest rates for quite some time. And if we're lucky, they might start dropping towards the end of this year. They all agree about the need, as I said earlier, to stamp out corruption and to make sure the government spending is spent correctly for the right reasons and spent properly. So all of those things are deemed by the markets to be positives that lie ahead, and therefore making investments here a bit more attractive, making the rand a bit more attractive.
Okay.
But as I was saying earlier, there's a brand new ball game. It's almost like somebody driving a motor car, which has not yet been fully completed. I think it's going to be kind of played by ear as we go along. The next important announcement, I believe, is going to be the composition of the president's cabinet. How many cabinet posts will be allocated to the DA and other parties, and which cabinet posts. So things could change literally from one day to the next. As we played by ear and come across issues which weren't thought about earlier. I mean, I think one thing that is going to be important is the country's international policy, because the DA and the ANC traditionally don't agree upon that. I'm not sure how they're going to achieve consensus there. Whole question of land reform. So we could see the rand going up and down according to change in market sentiment, but fundamentally, I would say that a more bullish outlook lies ahead.
Professor Andre, I like the fact that you mentioned that it's going to be a different ball game now, just in about 30 seconds. Now, it will seem that this different kind of government for Cyril Ramaphosa would be something of a challenge for him, because we'll have to start consulting for every economic decision, and that might slow drag South Africa's economy. Now, do you think that could be a problem? Just about 30 seconds. When it comes to implementation, do you think that could be a problem?
Yeah, I don't think it will. I think that, as I said earlier, the fundamental economic stance of the ANC has been fairly conventional in the last number of years. I don't think we're going to see major conflict there. I think his biggest challenge, as has been the case for the last 5 years, is potential resistance within his own party.
All right, Professor Andre Roux, economist, University of Stellenbosch Business School. It was nice talking to you. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. Goodbye.